Hello everybody. In this video we are going to talk about ECG. But before starting the discussion on ECG, let's review a few basics. Let's talk about depolarization and repolarization. Depolarization is a process where sodium ions will enter within the cell and instruct a normal cell to contract. Whereas repolarization is a process wherein ions will leave the cell, instructing a contracted cell to expand. Now the ion that leaves a cell for repolarization is not going to be the ion that entered the cell, which is sodium, but the ion that is going to leave the cell is going to be potassium, because potassium is abundant within the cell while sodium is abundant outside the cell. Hence, during depolarization, sodium ions will enter within the cell and instruct a normal cell to contract, while during repolarization, in a contracted cell, potassium, which is abundant in a cell, is going to exit the cell to instruct it to relax and come back to its normal form. So, this is depolarization and repolarization. Now, let's look at the stages of the electrical activity of the heart. So we have 4 stages of electrical activity of the heart. So the first step is atrial depolarization. In this step, the atria will contract. Next, we have atrial repolarization. In this stage, the atria will relax. Next, we have the ventricular depolarization, wherein the ventricle will start contracting. And finally, we have the ventricular repolarization, wherein the ventricle will start relaxing. So, these are the 4 stages of the heart associated with electrical activity. Let's look at the ECG now. So, this is one cardiac cycle, or the electrical activity in one cardiac cycle. This is the P wave, this is the QRS complex, and this is the T wave. One cardiac cycle takes approximately 0.8 seconds. Now let's try and understand what each wave of the cardiac cycle is trying to indicate. First, let's look at the P wave. P wave is this structure over here. The P wave is indicative of the first electrical activity, which is, if you remember, atrial depolarization. Hence, P wave is the wave that is sending the electrical activity for the atria to contract. Next, we have the QR and S complex. So, this is the QRS complex. So, based on our chart, we expect the QRS complex to be atrial repolarization. But it is not atrial repolarization. QRS complex is ventricular depolarization. So, we skip this step during the ECG. So, QRS complex is ventricular depolarization. Now, it's natural to have this question that what happened to this step? Why doesn't the ECG show this step in its reading? Why is atrial repolarization completely avoided? So, what happens is, when the atria is repolarizing, simultaneously the ventricle is depolarizing. But the ventricular depolarization is much stronger than the atrial repolarization. Hence, the ventricular depolarization will overpower the atrial repolarization, and only the ventricular depolarization is going to be visible, which is the QRS complex. Next, we have the T wave, which is the final wave, and this, as expected, is going to be the ventricular repolarization. Hence, the T wave is ventricular repolarization. So this is an overview of what we've covered in this video. I hope this video was helpful. That's all we have for today. Thank you.